My name is Ben Merkle. I'm president of New St. Andrews College. My address is 528 East 1st Street. I have more than fits at this podium. So I'm asked to respond to each of the appellants here, and so I'm not sure quite how this goes together. I got to weave through a number of them, bring up the same thing a few times. So I'm going to try to hit the major points that they bring up. There will probably be a few smaller points that I'm not able to get to. If there's anything I've missed, I know you're free to ask me questions later on in the deliberation, and I would welcome that. So first of all, let me thank you, members of the City Council, Mr. Mayor, for taking the time to review this matter. You're being asked this evening to review the Board of Adjustment's granting of a CUP to New St. Andrews College for the use of the old Cadillac Jacks building as an educational institution. And I think the various appeals, one of the things that you'll see throughout is the allegation that the city staff did an inadequate job of preparing the case for the BOA, and that there is new information or that there was incorrect information. There's new information that should have been there that they didn't hear, or that there was incorrect information that they were fed, and that's why you ought to send this back to the BOA. I think it's important that we distinguish between the BOA not having correct information and the BOA having the info that not having the info that the appellants wanted them to have. Okay, there's a big difference between those two. If the Board of Adjustment had the info that they want and it was correct and made the determination, that's different than the Board of Adjustment not having additional facts that some of the appellants wanted them to consider. Let me give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. The claim is that the BOA did not adequately consider the fact that granting NSA a CUP on this property would mean that it could not be used for retail space. That was presented as they were missing information. Mr. Hall says that this shows that the BOA did not have information about the city's comprehensive plan. The city's code and comprehensive plan both urge the BOA to protect street-level retail, and I think we saw that in a number of the comments just now. However, as the city staff has made it clear, CJ's does not have any street-level space and is ill-suited for retail. And CJ's has already been given a CUP to be converted entirely into apartments with no retail space whatsoever. That was on January 6, 2016. And it was specially noted at this hearing by both the city staff and the BOA members that this building does not work well for retail. Linda Paul welcomed a non-retail use for this building because she said it had struggled for over 20 years to find a good use. This was before the BOA, and all of this was brought up again during our hearing. They talked about it quite a bit. And what's interesting is no one appeared at the earlier when a CUP was filed to convert this entirely to apartments. Nobody appeared at that hearing to contest it, and the CUP was passed unanimously. There was no contest when it was being converted to apartments, completely removing it from retail space. The BOA was fully aware of this question and simply ruled in a manner that is unfavorable to some of the appellants. It's not that they lacked any of the information. That information was discussed quite a bit. Another example, it's alleged that the BOA voted on incorrect data because it was mentioned that NSA had supplied the number of 3.4%, that the square footage in the CB is 3.4% educational institution. That was not supplied by NSA. That was supplied by the city. And it's alleged that the BOA, in using that number, was acting on incorrect information. However, the BOA, and the reason it's alleged it was incorrect was because 3.4% does not include the square footage of the parking lot that NSA owns on the Jackson Street parking lot. So our current CUP requires that we have 42 parking space, and we get most of that from that Jackson Street lot. So that square footage is not included in the 3.4% number that was thrown out. However, the BOA knew that this number did not include the parking lot. That was talked about for quite a while. They weren't deceived or tricked or acting on inaccurate information because they knew 3.4 referred not to the parking lot. They were aware of what data they were working with and considered it adequate for the determination that they were making. That was a judgment by the BOA that was adequate information. And additionally, I would just point out that since we're speaking about use and not ownership, at NSA, we don't teach classes in that parking lot. We park there, okay? So because we're talking about use and not ownership, I think the city staff was right to not count that as educational, an educational facility. So it's not the case that the BOA acted on incorrect data. They had the data they wanted to make the vote that they made. The appellants are not actually identifying missing information, but merely identifying another place where they disagree with the decisions of the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Davis has argued that the vote needs to happen again because not all 7 members of the Board of Adjustment were there for the night of the hearing. However, the code says this is Title 3, Chapter 1, 1.4. The presence of 3 members shall be necessary to constitute a quorum, and 3 affirmative votes shall be necessary for granting a variance or conditional use permit. We followed the law, we followed the code, we've met everything. It's just simply a disagreement with the actual outcome of the vote, or wanting a do-over. The city did a thorough and, I think, professional job in preparing traffic studies for the Board of Adjustment hearing. The Board of Adjustment considered the amount of information that was supplied, and they did debate over whether more information was necessary. You'll notice in all the appeals, they mention other things that they think that the BOA should have been considering. Each of those was brought up in the BOA hearing. Mr. Long said, should we ask for this? Should we ask for this? In the end, after hearing all the other things that they could ask for, 3 members of the BOA still voted, no, we have enough information, and passed it. So you can say that there are all kinds of other studies that they could have done, but they considered that and passed it. I appreciated that we were clarified at the beginning that the City Council isn't attempting to substitute your judgment for the Board of Adjustment's judgment. I think that that's what you're being asked to do, to step in and tell the Board of Adjustment, your judgment here that this information is enough was wrong, and you need to actually go back and do other things. The appellants are arguing that the BOA was wrong and they need to do more traffic surveys. They're wanting a do-over of the BOA's vote. David Hall's appeal indicates that he wants a study that covers lunch traffic, after-school traffic, morning rush hour, evening business rush hour, evening traffic from cultural events, Friday evening traffic as distinct from the others, Saturday evening traffic as distinct from the others. He would also like a separate survey of pedestrian traffic. Ryan Pilgrim wants a study to go for longer than 5 days. So you're getting a number of things, other homework assignments that the BOA could have done. The BOA considered those and felt like they had enough information to vote. And I do think that what's being asked here, it would be an onerous workload to put on the city staff, which has already done, I think, a great job on this review. A few just miscellaneous things that I would note. One thing that's brought up a few times is the perceived conflict between number 4 and number 7 of the city's criteria and standards for the CUP. The concern is that there would be an unintended consequence for requiring NSA to supply parking. So you say, well, we need extra parking if you're going to have this facility, so we got to have this big parking lot over here. But as soon as you require the parking, the 47 parking spots, you don't know what kind of impact you will have made on the city by doing it. So it's pitched as a bit of a catch-22. But this ignores the fact that any purchase of a parking lot that NSA makes to fulfill the requirement of the CUP will still have to be subject to all the requirements of the city zoning code. Right? If NSA buys a new parking lot, it will need to be in a zone that expressly permits it. Or, and it was mentioned that Mr. Long was saying, well, if it ends up being in the center of the business district, how do we know that it's going to not destroy the flavor of the town? Well, I can't put a parking lot in the middle of the central business district without a CUP. It will either, any parking lot that NSA builds or purchases would have to either be in a zone that expressly permits it, or if it's in a zone that doesn't expressly permit it, we will have to get a CUP for it. And the city will have a chance to steer that and direct it. And you'll have the chance to assess its impact. Just a side note, when NSA was given the CUP for the current building that we're in, we were required to provide 42 parking spaces somewhere, and this was interesting, the city said somewhere within the city limits. 42 parking spaces somewhere within the city limits. NSA could have rented those spaces as far away as Walmart if we had wanted. We could have done that and said we've fulfilled the letter of the law and there's nothing the city could do about it. However, we purchased and began paving the Jackson Street lot immediately across from NSA so that it would really fully fulfill not just a letter, but the spirit of the requirement that the city was putting on us. And when Main Street is closed down for the farmers market on Saturdays, and the city loses 59 parking spaces that are on Main Street, because that's where farmers market, NSA opens up 62 spaces in the lot immediately opposite for the city to use, and we open that up for the city. It would be our desire, if the CUP that we've been given seems to be a totally reasonable and workable one, that we think that we can fulfill all the requirements in it. And it would be our desire that as we seek to fulfill the requirements in that CUP, to fulfill the spirit of the requirement as well as the letter, and to make it be something that serves the needs of the city. One of the things that was noted was that concert halls are not permitted by right. 4.3.5b4 permits by right entertainment, dancing, and recreation establishments, including restaurants, bars, theaters, video arcades, dance halls, and physical fitness centers. A concert hall is an entertainment venue that falls right in the middle of that definition. This building has been a concert hall for over a century. That's what this has been. It's hosted concerts performed by Frank Sinatra, Benny Goodman, and Glenn Miller. If concerts are no longer going to be permitted in the Central Business District, will we be sending the Jazz Festival elsewhere? Do we not consider that something that belongs downtown? It was concerned that if we fill out the concert hall with a bunch of, fill out those seats with a bunch of people coming to downtown, we will have killed retail business downtown. But I'm sorry, if you go to a concert, you go out for dinner. We will be bringing business to downtown with that concert hall. A few things. Mr. Davis said that our filing did not include a written description of plans, projected enrollment growth, and proposed phasing in of enrollment growth and of parking. I have no idea what he's talking about. Review our application. That's exactly what we provide in our application. A few times there were suspicions that somehow by starting this at CJ's we will become in violation of our current CUP at the current location. We're doing nothing to change our current CUP. It's in effect. We're capped at 200 students there, and we plan to continue to honor that restriction. I don't know how we would be in any way violating our current CUP or doing anything that would run afoul of that. Closing, I'd like to just note one other reoccurring theme that goes throughout the appeals that you've received. There's a concern in most of the appeals expressed on behalf of the businesses that are in the central business zone. This idea Moscow has something special in the central business zone, and we don't want to mess that up. And first of all, let me just say completely, I think downtown Moscow is fantastic. And as I said at the BOA hearing, if I ask an NSA student, you ask any NSA student, and we do this all the time for recruitment purposes and that sort of thing, what is it about coming to NSA? What's the thing that most stands out? They will always say, and it's 99% of the time, they will say community. They love being a part of this community. They love being downtown. They love being able to go to the coffee shops, to eat burgers at Humble Burger, to go to Casa. They love being a part of downtown. And we deliberately do not do dorms. We don't do food services or anything like that. We want our students to be a part of downtown. So I wouldn't want to do anything that jeopardized the vibrant downtown community of Moscow. I think it's a valid concern that we want to protect that unique feel, and I think it is the job of the BOA to be protecting downtown business development. I say amen to all of that. But I think it's telling that if you go back and review the COP hearing, that everyone who spoke up at the hearing representing a business from within the central business zone, and there were a number of them, quite a few of the people that were there had businesses in the central business zone, and everyone that represented one of those businesses spoke in favor of this CUP. It was a very strong public businesses supporting what we're doing. They see NSA students. They see the economic benefit of what we're doing. They see it as something that is positive. And I think that you should contrast that with the fact that not one of the appeals that are before you is from a downtown business owner. All right, they're not downtown business owners saying this is going to damage my business. They were there actually in favor of it. I think the concern for business is a legitimate one. We need to protect downtown businesses and the prosperity and growth of our central business zone. But the remodeling of CJ's will be good for downtown business, and I think most of downtown actually sees it that way. And I think one of the, just a quick note in wrapping it up, these appeals, I think they don't just attempt to block NSA's purchase of CJ's. I do think that they will set up a roadblock for future development. Take, for instance, the demands for traffic studies that I listed for you earlier that was included in these appeals. I think this list of studies, if this is the list of studies that has to be performed for everybody that's going to start a new business, I think you're setting a precedent for the city staff that would hinder future economic development. And I would suggest that these appeals propose a level of bureaucratic reporting that would stifle business in our downtown. I think the Board of Adjustment and the city staff both worked excellently to review all of the relevant information and to give a very professional determination. It wasn't exactly what NSA asked for. We asked for less parking. There were a few things that we thought should be different, but the Board of Adjustment, I still think, made a great determination. They tweaked a few things from what we had, and we're really happy with this CUP and would be excited to see it last. So again, I want to thank you for your consideration of this matter. Please let me know if you have questions for me. As I mentioned, there were a number of things in there that I would love to address, but to cram it all into 15 minutes I don't think is really possible.